Howdy, and welcome to episode 14 of Talking Shit About with me, Elizabeth. It's August, which means it's officially been a year of the podcast. Whoop, 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 whoop. Really, thank you to everyone who's supported me so far, or who's going to support me. You know, maybe this is your first episode. Welcome. It's an intense one to jump into. I looked online, and there are about 2 million podcasts on Apple Podcasts, but according to imore.com, about 26% of those only have one episode, and almost 2/3 have 3 or fewer episodes. So I'm feeling pretty good. Granted, a lot of those are probably weekly podcasts, and I only come out the first Friday of each month, but, still, I'm giving myself a little pat on the back. So this episode, we're talking about grief, we're talking about death, we're talking about loss. We will be mentioning suicide and child abuse, so please keep that in mind. To my dear family, I talk a little bit about dad. It lasts a minute. I give you a heads up. So, if you want to skip that, that's totally fine. And I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation with Ferd. He's very cool. He's very funny. And I'm going to go ahead and let us start talking some shit. I'm here today with Ferd. Are you down to use your full name, I guess?
Yeah.
Should have asked that earlier. Ferdinand Poe.
Yes, indeed.
Comedian and artist here in Missoula for our second part of Talking Shit About Grief. Ferd, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm nervous to talk about sad things.
Yeah. Well, at least it's a beautiful day, and
Yeah.
there's people yelling about not being junkies, and there's some good old American rock playing in the background.
You're really setting the scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. So I'll first, before we get into heavy shit, let you talk about yourself and what kind of makes Ferd Ferd.
Okay, cool. I love talking about myself. I think if I were to just throw out the keywords, comedian's definitely one of them. Indigenous, neurodivergent, trans, and super cool, I would say. Yeah, I'm a father, and that takes up most of my time, honestly, so I probably should have started with that one. But that's basically all there is to it in a nutshell. There's not a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just launched a Patreon,
I
right?
did, yeah. I
Yes.
launched a Patreon. It's called Radish Prints, and I do printable activities, coloring books, just weird art coloring sheets, just kind of greeting cards that are completely unnecessary for weird situations. I'm trying to just keep it really loose on what I'm doing because I just want to enjoy what I'm doing,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fun way to go about it.
Totally.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about if you don't meet an expectation, then it,
Right. As long as I'm throwing something out once a week, then I feel pretty good about it. And
Yeah.
if one day I feel I'm going to make a thing that you fold and it becomes a different picture, then I can do that. And if the next, if I get tired of what I'm doing, then I'll just switch what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's an ADHD thing. I'm planning ahead.
I've been trying to think of a graceful segue. So we're talking about loss and grief on this series. So, I'm going to open the floodgates.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So you lost your mom recently?
Yeah, in December.
So yeah, that's pretty recent.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
kind of expected in a way because she was sick for a long time. And she made it years past where we thought that she would. And it still was unthinkable somehow when it happened, I just was on a Tuesday, just whenever you okay. Yeah, it was a really hard experience. I don't know how structured this is. Should I just be talking?
Yeah, just talk, and
Okay,
then if you
yeah.
don't know what to say, just let me know, and then
Totally. It was kind of a complicated grief too because I had a kind of a weird relationship with my mom for many years here, and all our life, but there were times when we tried to repair things and stuff like that, but coming out as trans was not her favorite, and we had just started trying to patch things up with that, but there was also kind of a big thing was that I had found out that there was some physical abuse when she was watching my kid, which you know, I lost it and we stopped talking. And then my kid, like a year later, was like, I'm mad at you because I want to talk to grandma. And I was like, okay, but I have to be there the whole time and stuff. So it's been complicated with just, you know, the idea, because, you know, I loved my mom. I mean, I still love my mom, or the idea of her. I don't know. But there's just like a lot of like resentment and anger and like kind of, and also like a lot of guilt for like, oh man, maybe I could have figured it out more so we could have been closer. Like you feel like you lost something that you could have had, you know. And so that's been probably the most complicated part of it. And then also just helping my kid go through grief with everything that was complicated for them with her too, you know. So it's been like, it is not in my wheelhouse and I'm not good at it, but we're just doing it because you have to, you know. Yeah.
What did you, so when you very first found out that your mom was sick, how did you feel then compared to when you found out the news?
Yeah, that's such a great question. When I realized that like we were talking about like something terminal, it almost feels like part of the grieving got done right then, sort of, you know, because you're just face to face with the idea that your parent is like susceptible to mortality, which obviously, but you know, but it was definitely stressful and like devastating to find out. And I think that I gave myself too much credit as far as like, I was like, yeah, so I'm expecting this, you know, like I said, like I got this figured out. When it happens, I've already gone through all these things and I could not have been more wrong. That was like the hubris is just insane. Yeah, I think this isn't exactly your question, but I think it's kind of like there's this feeling of guilt there too, because when you have somebody in your life who is sick for a long time, I don't think that it's super uncommon to like sometimes have these like guilty thoughts of like, oh man, I almost just want it to be over with, because there's like this that hovering feeling of grief that's just like ready to like be on you, and so there's like this anxiety there. And of course you don't want somebody that you love to be dead or something, but like it was almost like, oh, okay, I need to get over, like I just need to get it over with or something. And you know, it was never anything that I would ever say out loud to anyone. I say it on your podcast, though. But at the time, you know.
Don't worry, no one listens.
Yeah, feeling very free right now. But yeah, part of the idea of like not putting shame into those like kind of like natural thoughts that happen is just saying it out loud, you know, because shame can't really live in the daylight. And so like admitting that to myself that I had those thoughts was an important turning point for me in my grief, because I think the guilt of that, and it's kind of like this like magic thinking where you're like, I caused it because I thought that one time, you know. So grief, like, I don't know, you don't really know how it's gonna affect you until it does, and you're just like, I'm crying into the smoothie at I almost said the name of the store, in this business, and because a classic rock song is playing, that reminds me of my dad, and then like, the next minute you're angry and you're like, why didn't I like email so and so or whatever? And it's just like all over the place. It really is. And I didn't cry when we went to I went to the hospital when it was happening, but everyone was too late. She died alone, and they were like, do you want to see the body? And I was like, weird, but yeah, I guess, you know. And they didn't even like take the tubes out of her or anything like that before. They did eventually before the grandkids came in, which is good, because I was like, that's probably gonna haunt their dreams forever. But I remember like my brother is crying, my mom's husband is crying, and I'm the crier, you know, like I cry all the time. I just see like a cat high five a toddler on a video and I'm bawling, right? But I just wasn't, and I was sad, I was devastated, and I remember like kind of feeling like, what the fuck is wrong with me that I'm not crying right now? And it took me a really long time to cry about it, actually. And it was like one of those situations where I was just like doing errands and nothing happened. There was like no trigger that was like, that reminds me of my mom. I was just like, oh, here we go, you know, and I just like started bawling. I was like, cool, I'm in public. This is excellent. I love this. Everyone's very comfortable with this, you know, but I'm glad that it did happen eventually, because there's some healing in that too, for sure.
Yeah. Feeling your emotions is like number one thing that you got to deal with.
And I think it's weird because like trying to like force yourself through it too, because I kind of had like this mindset of like, oh, okay, so if it's a process, then I can get to the other end of it, and so I'm gonna like go through pictures, I'm gonna talk, you know, like tell all these stories, I'm gonna write jokes, I'm gonna do all this stuff because I'm just gonna fucking barrel through. And I think like honestly, I think that my grieving process is really slow and there's nothing I can do about it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that did was hurt me, I think, by like going too fast with it, or trying to. Like,
Yeah.
you have to sit with your emotions when they hit you, but there's also no way to just be like, okay, now I'll do it then. I have a weekend off, let's do this, It doesn't work that way either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, introspection and feeling your emotions, again, key. Are there other things that you have found have been like really helpful or just feel good?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things that happened that, like, as far as like what helped was storytelling with people that knew my mom as well. And part of that was like really humbling. Everything that happens to me is humbling. But because like there were stories from like my older cousins who my mom, before I was born, when their dad died, she went and like up to Alaska and like lived with them, and they had these stories where they were like, oh, and she wrote poetry every day and bacon and eggs all the time, and like I have all these beautiful memories of your mom dancing around. And that is not the mother that I know. She never listened to music. I went to school for poetry. She said she hated it. Like I've never seen her write a word unless it was a grocery list, And so I was like, at first I was kind of like pissed a little bit. I was like, my mom did that for you? Like, but it's cool to realize that whatever my experience of my mom was, like, it's not all the dimensions of who she was. And that was like really helpful for some reason, like, yeah. I really liked that. And also just like hearing little silly stories that I would have, never, I'm not really that close with my mom's side, but like when grief happens, and she has a twin, and he was telling me a story where my cousin hit her up on her birthday and was like, happy birthday, Aunt Brenda. And she was like, oh my God, you remembered my birthday? That's so sweet. And he was like, yeah, it's my dad's birthday or whatever. And like, just like these little jokes, like when you're feeling so low about something, it's like, and then like something like that happens, it's like you get like a little part back, sort of, and I love that.
Do you have good memories with your mom?
Yeah, and actually this was like one of the things when I was like thinking about things where I was like, I had like a bunch of stories that weren't necessarily like good stories, and I was like, this isn't like appropriate to tell right now with these other people who are grieving. That's not helping, but and I was like having a hard time like thinking of like these good memories. And just lately there's been like a few that pop up, and they're just really small things, like one time I walked into her room when she was getting dressed, and I was like 9 or something, and she was wearing this fanny pack, and I was like, where'd you get that? And I went to go touch it because I was like, if you have fanny pack money, then you have McDonald's money for sure.
Yeah.
Like, where'd you get that? And I touched it, and it was just like her, it was her belly with underwear pulled over, like too high over like where her pants were. And like that, like for some reason we both like lost our minds in that moment and like laughed for like 20 minutes about it. And it's like, I don't know, like some of it isn't like really translatable for like why it was good, but my mom was a very like, she just was working all the time, going to school. I was like latchkey kid. She was always stressed for like most of my childhood. And like, so it's like these kind of moments where we could bond over like just being silly or something like that. And a lot of those come up a lot,
Were you an only kid?
No. So, there's 8 of us, but with my mom, there was just my other brother, who's my half brother, but I like spent most of my childhood just growing up with that brother. And they were older than me by 1.5 years, but in many ways they were kind of like my younger brother for reasons. And my mom and my brother always had like their relationship, they just understood each other. They think the same way, they're very similar, they like a lot of the same things. And I really wasn't in that a lot of the time, so they were like much, like she loved us the same, whatever, but like they were much closer. And even like throughout adulthood and stuff, they definitely were. Yeah. So when when Timer heard all, like, was there and like bawling and stuff, there was definitely a lot of anger. And they like, Timer, he was kind of like mad at me for a while because I was just like grieving differently and like slower probably, and was just like, what the fuck, but good luck editing out all those knows.
No. So good. I leave in a lot of my likes. It keeps me humble.
Yeah.
So it happened during the pandemic. Did you guys have a memorial service?
Yeah, there was a memorial service, which I did not go to, and that has to do with a lot of like my mom's family, not a huge fan of me and my, like, just who I am, you know? I almost said choices, but let's be real.
Yeah.
No one chooses that. But, and I just, like, I don't know. In my mind, I think people were mad at me for that anyway, for not going. But in my mind, I was being, like, respectful and being like, I'm not the only one grieving here. I'm not going to, like, cause shit just with my very presence, you know? And I do kind of regret that a little bit, but I think, because people are so mad at me about it, but I think I made the right choice because I think shit would have gone down. Because when you're grieving, like, I'm already kind of a little bit, like, I don't know, outspoken, I guess. And I was not in a good place. Nobody was. I'm sure if something would have been said, I would have ruined it, you know? I didn't really trust myself to just, like, suck it up and, you know, take all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was for the best, because I don't think, like, a fist fight at the funeral service is, like, I don't know, it's pretty on brand for the family, but I still don't feel like we needed it in the scrapbooks or anything, you know? She got buried in Libby, and I still haven't gone out to the grave, but that's what I'd like to do this summer, and just kind of, like, dip in and try to be in Libby without everyone knowing, which is impossible, probably. But Roman, my mom was, like, obsessed with salt, and my kid Roman was like, we should bring a salt lick to Grandma's grave because that'll be funny. And I was like, it will be funny. Yeah, I loved that so much. Yeah, but didn't do the service. I watched it online though because everything's on Zoom. Yeah. And so that was kind of weird because I was like, I felt kind of like creepy about it or something, sort of, you know. But
got to be there in spirit.
Yeah.
So I know that your mom passed because of, like, social media, but that's how, like, I know anything about anyone anymore is through social media. And I know sometimes you're, like, vulnerable on it and stuff, so kind of, like, building a parasocial relationship with you through, like, your posting. But
I mean, yeah,
I feel like you probably make some, like, connections with people. Do you feel like it's helpful, like, in a way?
Yeah, so I think there were good things about throwing it all out there, and there were bad things too. And the bad things were nobody's fault either. I think when I'm lucky because people care about me and they wanted to be helpful, right? But there was also, like, this thing where, like, it's this unfair expectation that I don't usually feel this about, like, when I throw out things that are personal, but, like, where there was just sort of this thing where, like, some people would, like, say something and in my mind I'm like, fuck you, you know, just because I'm mad and sad, you know? And you're like, nobody understands me, because when you're sad, you're like, I'm an island or whatever. But it was also helpful because I think that what that really granted me was, like, a lot of space to, like, just not be okay and everyone to know why, you know, which is really what I needed, you know. So that was good. But there were, like, a few situations where, like, somebody came over to my house uninvited to, like, drop off stuff, and I, like, just didn't answer the door, and they were texting me being like, I have stuff for you, and I was like, no, and they just, like, left it or whatever. But just, like, and in my mind I was like, this is the worst thing, no one can look upon me, you know. So
do you think that would have been different if there weren't a pandemic happening?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like maybe if this had happened pre-pandemic, then I would have, like, different boundaries with that in general, you know. But I think just since the pandemic, just the idea of somebody just dropping by is, like, really, I'm like, how uncouth. Like, how dare you? Yeah. So, and I used to kind of have the house where, like, friends would just, like, oh, just come by if you're around, sort of, you know. I live downtown, like, just, like, walk in and grab something from my fridge if I'm not there, whatever, you know. And that changed completely for sure. So yeah, but also when I'm, like, I knew I wasn't okay and I was grieving, you know, in a really, like, gross way, just from a like in a visceral way. I just, like, wasn't showering or, like, you know, I think that's pretty normal. And I just, the idea of anyone, like, people were like, can I drop by and give you a hug? And I was like, do not ever think about touching me. Like, you know, I was, like, grossed out with myself and didn't want people physically around, for sure.
Was there anything that helped you, like, get out of that, or was it just kind of time?
Yeah, you know, I do think that time was probably the biggest factor. Like I said, I really tried to, like, barrel my way through things. I was like, yeah, and that I don't think I had any control. It was just, like, me trying to feel in control of something. I think time is the number one thing. Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause I even after, like, I mean, it's not after. I'm still grieving, but, it's better now. And you would think like I had like some kind of like understanding of how I got to here, and I don't. So it has to just be time,
So is your mom like the first person in your family that you were close to that you've lost?
No. So my family on both sides is pretty riddled with like mental illness and like addiction issues and stuff like that, and also just health issues. So I've had quite a few people in my family go. The mom strain hits different for sure. Like parent stuff, that's way different. But like I've lost, and just like grandparents to old age, but then like lots of cousins and some uncles for various reasons, and also just like a lot of friends in my life have definitely are gone, and I guess that's part of the reason why I thought I was going to be able to like handle shit better, because I was like, oh yeah, I've done this. But like it's different every time, and for each person and where they're at and what the relationship was and like fucking whatever, where the planets are, who knows? Like it's so, yeah. I don't think that grief is a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sage advice. Yeah, when my dad died and I went through all that shit, I was like, you know what, I'm pretty good about this, I can be a therapist, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend die, and we weren't even that close. We just like, he was the DJ that I trained at the station and like hung out a couple times, but he was just really nice, and that fucked me up for like a month. I was just like so depressed.
Yeah.
And you just never know like
totally
how it's gonna hit you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had things like that where like I just find out that like a high school boyfriend is dead or something, and I'm like, I haven't thought about him in 10 years, and I'm just like it feels like devastated, and then like a little bit like gross, where I'm like, this isn't my grief, I don't get to have this or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
oh my god, I felt that. Yeah, totally. I felt that same thing.
Yeah.
That poop?
Which is silly though, because it's like, of course you can just, it's not like you're like showing up and being like to the funeral or something and being like, I want to say something or something, you know what I mean? Like, feel how you feel. It's weird how much shame can just go into like the natural, like just what you're feeling,
Yeah, or what you're not feeling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Or like everyone grieves different, and like I had a lot of guilt because I did grieve differently than a lot of other people that my mom were close to, where I did like I was making lots of like pretty dark jokes with my close friends, like not just blasting it out there or something. And some people, when people die, it's like really important for them to like create this, the way that they want to honor a memory is by like taking the best parts of a person and like really cementing that for themselves. And I don't know, for me that feels disrespectful in a way, to like, I want all of the gross stuff to still be there. I don't want like purification of my mom, especially because it was so complicated. So I feel like that was not, it made me feel guilty a little bit, because I was like, why is this funny to me? But it wasn't, it's not really funny. I was just like desperately trying to make it okay. Or like, I think one of the huge things about grief is that it's such a lack of control, and part of like the grieving process in my mind anyway, for everyone in so many different ways, is like super loose, but is like, how do you get that control back? Some people get really religious, some people want to like define the narrative. Some people get really into the logistics of death, and they're like the person who's like, I know the plot and I know what's going on, and I'm going to look at the finances, and that's like, because they're like, I'm going to control something. And I think maybe not everyone, but I see that happen with a lot of different people in a lot of different ways of like, where does that control come in? And for me, like part of that was controlling the narrative, but not necessarily in that heroification way, just like being like, I can make this okay through jokes or something,
Yeah, I did the same thing. Dad jokes, I don't know, they're fun.
I mean, totally. And I mean, they can make people pretty uncomfortable, but if you have another, like somebody with another dead parent, you're just like zing.
Long before my dad passed, I was watching Batman with a friend. I think it was like the 80s or 90s one. Is it the Val Kilmer one? It doesn't matter. Batgirl's in it.
Okay.
But her parents die, and then it's so it's Robin, Batgirl, and Batman, and they're talking about it, and I'm like, oh, it's the Dead Parent Club. And I look over at my friend whose mom just like died, and I was like, oh, sorry. And he was like, no, it's fine, it's funny. Yeah, so I was like, okay, cool, thank God. But yeah.
Totally. I mean, that's so funny because like my friend Brady, she was making like a bunch of jokes because she got the vibe for me to do that, you know, and we were I can't remember who it was, but we were in front of another friend, and you know, she was like really throwing them out there or whatever, and my other friend was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it was like almost a fight, and I was like, I'm not like physically laughing right now, but it's helpful that she's doing that. That's okay. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Two kinds of friends.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Is there anything that someone has said that's been particularly unhelpful?
Yeah, I think there's been like, so I think the biggest thing is that sometimes when people, I got two things. The first one is when people say, if you need anything, let me know. Because you literally don't know what you need. It's so much more helpful if somebody is just like, guess what? I went to your house and I cleaned it, or whatever the fuck is the thing, you know, which did happen for me because my friends are rad, you know, and I just like came home and my shit was clean, and I was like, thanks, because I'm disgusting right now. But like this idea of like when you don't know what you need, sort of, and you're like, it's like, it just feels like kind of like an empty thing. And I know people don't mean it that way. I'm sure when people say that, when they're just like, if you need anything, let me know, they like truly mean that you could do that. But it's like an empty offer, sort of, when you don't know what the fuck you need or what you're going to need,
or what that person's boundary is going to be. Because like, what if I'm like, I need meth, like
right,
I need copious amounts of meth, and like, is that person gonna deliver, or is that person gonna be like, I don't think that's what you need, I think that's a terrible idea?
That's such a good point too, you know. And I think that's what like stops you when like from like even asking for anything, you know, because that's, you know, it's a funny example, but like, what if you really were just like, yeah man, I need like somebody to take my kid for the day or something, and they were just like, nah, then that would like, ugh, and then you wouldn't ask for help another time, of course,
like, right,
because there's a lot of shame with asking for help built up in our culture too, you know.
And I interrupted you said there was a second thing that's unhelpful.
Okay, where was I going with that? Okay, so the other one is kind of like it's almost like the opposite, where it's like too specific, because somebody has also gone through grief and they, you know, they know what helped them, or they know like what that felt for them, and sometimes like, and people will just be like, yep, this is what you got to do, because this is what like helps, you know, you just get, and like, even though you don't want to just shower every day or whatever the hell the thing is, you know. And that was really frustrating and unhelpful, just from the thing where like, I mean, I was already in like kind of the angsty place of like, you don't get it, nobody gets it, you know. But that, I think that's true for literally everyone who's grieving. No one can truly understand that exact brand of grief and what's going to help the person really, you know. And so that was really obnoxious to me, at least. It was, it wasn't harmful, but definitely not helpful. The thing that people say all the time is like, you never stop grieving, you know. And that, I guess that's probably true, you know. I don't know yet, but I've never have, but it's definitely different though too. And so like, when you're in the middle of like the shit, when it's like the worst it's going to be probably, you know, and you don't know like how to get out of it, and people say, yeah, and that'll never stop, that also kind of is like, shit, you know. Because things do get easier because you have to keep living, and so you do, right? So I could have done without that as well, I think. I think they mean like, you'll always still feel it, like you'll never be like, but I totally see what you're saying. And I think that is what's meant with it. I think it was just like a really scary thought to me. You know what I mean?
It's like, when you're depressed and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna cycle again, and then I'm gonna be depressed again.
Exactly. But I don't think that's like necessarily a bad thing to say either, because there is something about grief too where you kind of don't want to let go of it either, because you only have so much left of the person, you know. And so like, somebody being like, and you never stop, you're like, good, because that would make me feel bad, you know, if I didn't feel bad.
I go back and forth on the, oh, that person would have wanted it this way, or like, that person would have wanted it that way, like advice, or I guess just because it's like, We don't know. I mean, people fucking showed their true colors over the pandemic. Who knows what my dad would fucking think now, like,
right,
or what he would actually want. I mean, like, there's some things, you know, like, obviously, I imagine he would want me happy.
Yeah,
but,
that
like,
seems like pretty fair to imagine.
Yeah, but I don't know. That was something. But maybe he didn't. I don't know.
Maybe that's why he died in the first place, just to fuck you up. Can I ask how your dad passed?
This is gonna be a good one. You ready?
Yeah.
It was suicide.
Oh yeah, that's
Yep.
okay. Yeah, that goes so perfectly into that joke. It's like we planned that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. And it was something that, like, I never really expected it to happen, but I also, like, wasn't surprised.
Yeah. Totally.
Because he had struggled a lot, and I think it was really interesting the way you mentioned, like, building the narrative or just the different ways that people cope, because being very analytical about it has, like, helped me recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, it comes and goes, the grief, and recently I was just like, you know what, I have a bunch of questions. Like, all I know is that he, like, died by gunshot.
Yeah.
And sorry, family, if this is too much for you, I'll put it in the notes. But it helped me, like, I, like, requested the autopsy report and everything. So I was like, you know, was he drunk? Was he this? Was he that? And it answered a bunch of those questions for me, and so now I don't have, like, the what if that's been driving me crazy for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not easy to look at, but it's not pictures, but, like,
well,
thank
of course.
God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, it's definitely helped. For some people, that'd probably be horrible. They would probably have a terrible time reading that. But
yeah.
I love true crime.
Yeah.
It's in a really fucked up way. It helped me.
I can see that helping a lot, you know? Like,
yeah.
I think, so not necessarily with those specific logistics and stuff, because that doesn't fit my situation with my mom, but, like, keeping, like, an analytical mind, or, like, I don't know, maybe analytical isn't the word, but, like...
Objective?
Yeah, objective. Just, like, really trying to avoid, like, these kind of, like, these comforting cliches and stuff, which maybe isn't good to, like, for some people that's what you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what is, like, the good thing to do. I really like not having that. Like, I am, my brother had, like, this thing where he was like, yeah, you know, the day that mom died, there was, like, this like light bulb in my apartment in the hall, and it just shattered as I was walking out, and I just knew something was wrong, or, like, things like that. And or, like, a bear came to my dad's house, or not my dad, my mom's husband. I never called him that, but and, like, the night that she died, and just, like, was by the window and then took off, and he was like, that was her, or whatever. And I was like, oh, I really like that. Like, I like the narrative of that, right? Mm-hmm. But it's, like, important for me to know also that, like, for just my own belief system and stuff, I'm like, she's not here. Or, like, you know, when people are like, that's what she would have wanted, there's something in that for, like, honoring the person. Mm-hmm. But I'm not, like, worried about her, like, having some kind of, like, cognition somewhere out in the universe, like, looking down.
God damn it, Ferd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those times are done. We've had enough of that.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it's like life's hard enough without, like, guilt of, like, a dead parent, like, thinking about what they would judge you for.
Totally.
Like, that's too much.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and especially, like, in death, apparently they can just, like, you know, there's, like, this idea where they're like, they're always looking down on you, and it's kind of like, don't all the time. You're not going to be happy. Don't tell God what you see, you know.
Are you spiritual at all then, or not really?
Not really. I think, you know, I do like all, like, the tarot and stuff like that, but even that's, like, I think of that as just, like, a system of symbolics to help you have a conversation with yourself that you might not otherwise have. Like, I'm very, like, obnoxious to a lot of people who are into that stuff, because I'm like, I don't have any spiritual belief, really. But I think that, like, I can still find, like, beauty and comfort in the idea that, like, yeah, when you're dead, you're gone. Like, there is something to that. There are things you can find about that are, like, comforting or, you know, okay. But my mom got really religious because she had the time to get sick and to be scared about dying, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, like, a common thing that people do with that, which is not me knocking on religion at all.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think it's a great thing to have. I just don't. And that was kind of weird because we did not grow up religious at all, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, and like, I never really knew what to say when she was, you know, just being like, and I know God will take me and stuff, because I can't be like, hell yeah, he will, you know, because that would be dishonest, but it also sounds like kind of shitty to just be like, I'm glad you think that, or something, you know. So it was, like, kind of a dance to respect that a little bit.
Yeah, there was this point after my dad died, and I was talking to his sister. I think I actually read about this in my senior paper for college. She mentioned this scenario, and she said she like heard my dad speak to her, and she's like very religious, so you know, it was like through God basically, or what I imagine. And yeah, I remember feeling kind of jealous.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had that, but I don't. It's
Totally.
just gone.
Yeah.
But then when I had my manic episode, it turns out I'm very similar to my dad, biologically.
That makes sense.
And I was speeding down the highway. I was driving back. It was like the week the pandemic was announced. I was driving back from aimlessly wandering the coast, trying to start a new life. And so I was listening to like a classic rock station because I didn't have my phone. I had left it. And I just had this like, the closest thing I can feel to a spiritual moment of like, holy shit, this is how my dad felt. Like when he would like go off and do shit or like, you know, just act really fucking weird. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it feels. And it was just like this huge relief. And like, I was like, okay, I can go back and face the fire. I don't remember the words, but yeah.
That's amazing because like a situation like that, you know, I said before, like, you know, there's these little things that like that allow you to like still kind of like feel close to them or like a connection that's there. And like something like that where you're just like, you know, you're overlaid, you're just like laying over like your dad's like shit right over yours. And like maybe it's not, you know, I don't want to like romanticize mental illness or whatever, but there is something to that, to just be like, I'm in my dad's headspace right now. You know? That's wild. Yeah. Maybe I'll get some of that at some point, because I never really had that with my mom being alive at all. Like, we were so different in just every way. Except we're both short, I guess. We got that. Maybe if I'm like reaching for something up high, I'll be like, this is what my mom felt. Not quite the same. Not the same.
Do you have any of her mannerisms or anything that you notice?
I think probably, you know, it's always hard to tell because it's like the stuff you came up with. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't, not to my knowledge, but there must be something, you know, and it would be cool to just like realize something about that at some point. I look a lot like her, you know, so that's something cool. Less and less all the time with testosterone, you know, but yeah, she was like, she definitely had like her, like, she had depression and stuff, which like I've got as well, but like just even the way that we both went about it was very different. She kind of had like this old school thing though, where like, I don't think that she had less depression, but she just had like some kind of like the shame or anxiety of like not performing while in an episode was like, would like overpower the kind of things where I'm just like, I guess I don't do shit, I guess I'm a piece of shit, you know, and I just don't. And she just like really did just power through a lot of that stuff. And I think it used to like kind of like confuse her with me, where she was like, why don't you care about just doing these things, you know? I was like, I do, but I just can't. And like to her, she was like, fuck you, you know, because she did so much. But
you seem like you do a lot.
Man, I don't know. I feel like if you just wanted to follow me around for a couple days, you probably wouldn't think that so much. I'm try. I feel like too much of my time is like literally just like disassociating into like a wall or something. And then I'm like, oh shit, okay, well I'm late.
It's better than doom scrolling.
That's true. Yeah. I've been doing better about that lately in general. Maybe my like frustration with like putting grief out into there actually helped a little bit to take steps back, honestly. Yeah.
What advice do you have for somebody going through something similar, like when you were first going through everything? You know, advice for your younger self too.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it makes it easier to answer when it's like advice for younger self, because first off, nobody knows shit. That just right off the bat, like, you're not going to find like the perfect advice. No one's going to be able to guide you through this in a way that is going to make sense for you, probably. And also the idea that it is a process, there might be some truth to that, but also the idea of a process really does have that idea that like, oh yeah, it's a thing that I will complete and then I'll just get to the other side, and when I figure out how it works, I'll just put the pieces together and I'll just roll through that. Is like not, well, maybe it will for you too, because like I said, everyone's different, but for me that's not true, and I wish I would have like really understood that much earlier, that like and like take your time and like be nice to yourself, because you're just not going to be okay for a while and you're just going to kind of suck for a while. Like, at all the things that you need to do. You'll probably be a sucky person to be around most of the time, you know, and just, like, give yourself room to just suck, because you are going to for a while, and it makes sense that you do.
Yeah.
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 Because I was, like, mean to people who were being very nice to me and shit, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean...
It's easy.
Yeah. I was just, like, angry and stuff and didn't realize how angry I was and just... Yeah.
They say anger is a secondary emotion. I don't really know what that means, but I hear it a lot.
I mean, okay, as somebody who's been institutionalized, let me tell you, but, like, yeah, the idea is that there's, like, these, like, softer emotions or whatever, my big air quotes that, for no reason, because it's a microphone, but, you know, things that are, like, a little bit more real, like fear and, you know, guilt, or shame more, you know, these things like that, and that, like, we don't know how to process that or do that, and so then it just, like, goes to anger, which totally checks out for me. That's, like, if I sit there and, like, think about why am I really angry, it's usually just because I'm being kind of a coward about things like that, you know. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch on, or any stories that came back?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I thought I did have one while we were talking, but I didn't want to interrupt myself because I don't know how to remember what I think. It'd be really nice to just think of, like, this perfect thing that
Right.
would, like, just be like, oh, here's, like, a little flavor of, like, who my mom was or something, you know?
Well, it's like you said, it's those things that are, like, in the moment. Like,
Yeah.
those little moments and stuff that really make a person.
Totally. And it's
You can
hard
be
to...
like the time we went to Disneyland, but that's a memory of Disneyland, you know? not-
Right, yeah. And it
person.
is, like, all the ones that have been popping up are just, like, these small things, you know, like, just, like, and they're not all, like, sweet or anything. Like, I remember, okay, so, like, a memory that I have that I just love of my mom, and it makes me laugh so much, and it, like, is, you don't know why if you don't know my mom, but it is, like, defining of her, where, like, for some reason, when I was 14, she decided that she was getting us all Valentine's Day presents or whatever, and there was, like, stringy underwear in there and, like, condoms and stuff like that. And I was like, Mom, did you get this for me? Thanks. And she was like, no, I didn't do that. Who gave that to you? And I was like, yeah, and Timer's got one too. And she's like, I have no idea. And it was just kind of like it was her being like, if you're having sex, be safe and have fun, but also couldn't, like, do that in person.
That's
and was
pretty
just
cute.
like, yeah, like, in her mind, she was like, this 14-year-old will totally believe that there's, like, a Valentine's Day Santa Claus, and I never have to deal with that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, but, like, all those things don't translate, like, unless you, like, know more about the person and the relationship. So it's just, like, yeah, these very small things. But I'm glad that I am getting them back, though, because at first there was just mostly just the negative things, sort of, you know. And I think it was the, you know, trying to find, like, closure for a bunch of shit that you're like, well, I'm not going to get help. There's not going to be a two-way street now. No, I just have to, like, figure out how you, like, hold love and anger in each hand, and, you know. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to end it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can people find your art and your comedy and all the things you do?
Okay, so I don't really have a platform for comedy online at all, except for my Facebook, I guess. I'm the worst at that stuff. Everyone else I know has, like, a website with their, like, tour dates and stuff, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot I have a show tonight. Does anyone want to go? But for my artwork and stuff, patreon.com/radishprince. You can come and check it out. I usually have some things that are just open to look at for free. If you pay $5, then you can, you know, print off things once a week. I got all kinds of weird stuff on there. And then there's also, I do, like, these full color prints that I send out once a month to people, like copies of things, you know. So if you're into weird art that you don't necessarily need, that's the place to go for it.
Always need art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not this art, but definitely some kind of art. But, you know, if you like unnecessary things, that's where to go.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ferd.
Yeah, thank you.
That is a wrap for episode 14 of Talking Shit About. Thanks again, Ferd, for coming on the show, and I hope you all will stay tuned for September 2nd episode, which will be part 3 of our grief series with my friend Bree from New Old Future. It's another great conversation, so look forward to that. And if you have not gotten a chance, please subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, Spotify. Also, if you're on Spotify and want to give me a rating, that'd be awesome. I don't have any at the moment. Granted, if you do a negative one, it'll hurt my feelings, but that's up to you. Free speech, blah, blah, blah. So, stay tuned next month and love ya.